Take it away, Mark.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm not going to talk about any doom and gloom type things at the moment, but I am going to say that we're absolutely delighted to host the MERCURIUS show featuring Thom Helm, Vik Shirley, Marcus Silcock, and Ben Niespodziany. And everything's sort of going to be slightly in the surrealist, absurdist mode today, because MERCURIUS is quite interested in that ambience. And before we get started with the feature, I'm going to introduce one of my co-hosts, Jeffrey Cyphers Wright, who's received his MSA after studying with Allen Ginsberg. He's known as a new romantic poet, also a publisher, critic, eco-activist, filmmaker, puppeteer, and artist. He's the author of 19 books of poetry, including Blue Lyre and Party Everywhere. His poems have appeared in many journals, including the Cafe Review, New American Writing, the Brooklyn Rail, Posit, and his most recent work also appears in anthologies such as Best American Poetry, New York Insiders, and Contemporary Surrealist and Magical Realist Poetry. His latest book, a book of sonnets and artwork called Doppelgangster, is out from Mad Hat Press. And Jeff also won the Sir Vision James Tate Prize, and he publishes Live Mag.
Oh, thank you for that, Mark. Thank you. It's so nice to be here on a Saturday afternoon with these lovely guests from worldwide. And before I start, my little friend would like to read his new haiku, and I'm going to help him a little bit. I'm just going to tell you the title here because you might not understand. It's Might, M-I-T-E, of Mites and Men, right? So here's Rufus. Let's interrupt, get us going here, break the ice and stuff. Oh, thank you very much, Jeff. Oh, yes, my little haiku here, we're dedicated to my good friend Mark. Yes, Mark and I were both born at the same time in opposite bungalows in the mountains of Banjangabo. But anyway, never mind that. It's not true anyway, but my little poem now is called Of Mites and Men. Traitors, fools, phonies, we brand the sky to spite you. Swallow shadows, rise. Well, thank you, Rufus. Did you steal any of those lines? What? Well, I would no, it's a little Chinese, but oh, okay, that's all right. Thanks. Yes, Rufus. Thank you, Rufus. All right. Now I'm going to read my latest little sonnet, and again with the title, excuse me, F stop. And when I thought of F stop, frankly, it was a dirty naughty thought, but then when I thought about it, I thought, well, gee, that word's got a lot of meanings. Uh, so f-stop. Where do you get off, sightseer? Focus the lens on what lies ahead. Let me cover your dream's tale. Wheresoever hooch meets cooch, I'll draw the line of fire and snap pictures of the hankering. Courage, citizens, our citadel is an umbrella. Bow not to a cudgel. Datura's yellow bugles bulge. A Riesling rises to the occasion. Raindrops riddle a puddle. Rings of ripples overlap, like us. The gravedigger strikes pay dirt. We enter a period that won't stop. So it feels like that in a way now. And Cindy, yes, Cindy, thank you, Cindy. Cindy encouraged me with the hooch and cooch lines because I was a little nervous about that.
I
Thank you.
pictured the F train. I don't have a dirty mind like you.
Hooch
And you sent that to me. And all I could think of is sightseer is one word.
I know, but I wanted to emphasize the word
I know you did
seer.
that purposely. I
Because
know.
I'm addressing seers.
I know.
Like Cassandra.
I realize.
Cassandra's a seer, right? So I will introduce our co-host now. Cassandra's an award-winning prose poet and international expert on prose poetry. Her prose poetry is widely anthologized and has been translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Cassandra has published more than 30 books and is currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima Maidens with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra co-wrote prose poetry, an introduction, and co-edited the anthology of Australian prose poetry. She's commissioning editor for Westerly magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia, where she's the only person awake right now. Cassandra.
Hey, Dominique's here. She's awake as well. So that we've got multiple Australians on the call. Yes, and I think Cassandra more than a seer was the prophetess of doom, sadly. So we'll leave why my mother called me Cassandra for another time. But I am going to read from this book, this anthology, which is going to be introduced by our incredible features shortly. So I'm just going to read one called Trash. That I often get asked to read, actually, because I think people are probably at their computers far often than they should be. It is Tuesday, and I'm dreaming that I live inside the trash can on your computer screen. Bottom right, lid slightly ajar, my head popping up at intervals, not to offer you advice, but to ask you why you left me. You have 3 reasons, but I can't hear what they are. The trash can graphic is too solid and the sound waves ricochet off the crenellations, facets, indentations. You have to type your responses and drag them to me so I can read them. I wait for you in the trash can. I wait for your mouse to lift me up and make me an icon. I want to be a square pink button with a harp sound when you click on me. I want to shimmer and pulse so you recognize me. I want you to constantly press on me, double click. Are there triple or quadruple clicks? I want your mouse to slide over me as I sit patiently, singing Kumbaya and toasting pink marshmallows, listening for you. You never let anyone else use your computer. No foreign fingers have ever touched the keys, so I feel safe, innocent, virginal. I am only yours. I am the only trash can you have ever used. I wonder if you have ever been unfaithful, if you have ever used other computers when I am sleeping, if you prefer other trash cans to mine. I worry every day that you will go to empty trash and I will disappear. So I would like to introduce the intrepid Mark Vincennes, a poet, fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He's published many books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently, The Pearl Diver of Irunmani, The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars, The Mayfly Codex, and the recently released Spells for the Wicked with Unlikely books. Forthcoming poetry collections are Ironclad with Spite and Dival, All the Tricks of Language with Dos Madres Press, and next year, No More Animal Poems with White Pine Press. It's accompanied by a post-classical music and spoken word album called No More Animal Songs. A chapbook, Rocket Ship to the Andromeda Galaxy, was just released. Mark is also a prolific translator, and he translates from German, Romanian, Spanish, Icelandic, and French. He's published 12 books of translations, most recently An Audible Blue, Selected Poems, 1963 to 2016, by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist, everyone here knows his name, Klaus Mertz, and it won the 2023 Massachusetts Book Prize for Translated Literature. His newest book of translations, In the House, Still Light, by Klaus Mertz, is forthcoming in November. His own work has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, French, Italian, Spanish, Romanian, Greek, German, and Icelandic. And I want to add Pig Latin because I love Pig Latin to that. So, Mark, that's the challenge. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He's lived all over the world. Regulars join in from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives on a farm in rural western Massachusetts, overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are still more, are you ready? Zigzag, furcular, yell skippers, and yellow-striped army worms than 10-toe bipedal earthlings. Mark, that was a good one. We got some new insects. I think they're insects.
Yes, insects. They're mostly insects nowadays because I'm running out of mammals and rodents. Mammals and amphibians. And, we can go with birds for a while, but insects has a lot. But insects are important. This is called A Pretty Penny. All the words in the world should have long been crucified. Human communication is flawed, the pilgrims say. The leftover power is anything but, the great emancipator once announced. The tropes continue on day by day. The union leaders mumble amongst themselves. Once, sibling, you'd said, a pilgrim's progress is accumulated through incremental personal gain, and morals are prescribed by mythical figures and allegorical stories promoted by the highest bidder. Truly, that bidder might be a gleaming icon in gold, or a budding star in silvery fishes, a warmonger or a Nobel laureate. Yet, as soon as the instruments of enchantment are curled feline in your warming lap, they spin hot tales to create their own historical narrative independent of the other cats. And when they cast their feline spells outside, they beguile and spellbind whoever might be inclined to look in their direction. If you can't think, sing, sibling. If you can't sing, wing it. And yet, even now, sibling, in this ghastly eon, there is still whispering in mysterious subterranean temples. Something abominable is being worshipped and ritualized. The cockatoo, too, sings before she thinks. For a few of us, reality remains simplified, individual, and occasionally transcendental. For most of us, reality is simply a trick of light. Right now, I see the apostles of refinement gently kissing hallowed ground, and a human blesses the bees and the children. Children? Isn't that such a strange word, sibling? Of course, it's all about the words between the words, not the actual words themselves. Thank you. And now I am incredibly delighted to introduce Thom Helm, who has lived and worked in several countries and speaks multiple languages. He founded MERCURIUS magazine in 2020 and co-edits The Surreal Absurd. Thomas is the author of 2 surreal absurd poetry pamphlets, The Mountain Where Nothing Happens and A Pilgrimage of Donkeys, and his creative work has appeared in a wide range of journals. In 2024, he won the UK's National Freelancer of the Year award for his environmental journalism, and in 2007, he was shortlisted for Ireland's Undergraduate of the Year award for an essay on Louis MacNeice's poetry. Thomas is also a sound artist, composer, and translator, and he lives deep in the beech forested mountains of Asturias in northern Spain. Welcome, Thomas.
Thanks very much, Mark. Thanks also for the lovely poems and introductions. Do I have 12 minutes? Is that right? I just want to check.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just like to begin by introducing MERCURIUS and this book, which we recently released, The Surreal Absurd, which was a fruit of 4 years' work, essentially. I guess I can describe the process as a kind of relay race. So initially I went to Marcus and asked him if he'd consider setting up a new section for a magazine. At the time, MERCURIUS was covering all kinds of different things. It had many different irons in the fire. And yeah, I mean, knowing Marcus's work, and especially his well-crafted prose poetry, it was, yeah, we were looking to start a section which focused on a kind of new kind of surrealism, maybe a bit of an old kind of surrealism as well. A form that really excelled at storytelling, that was accessible, but not overly simple, but was fun, but you know, also carried deeper philosophical meanings and what have you. And so Marcus then got the ball rolling in this kind of relay race. He did some amazing curation work, and then he passed the baton to Vik, who was tireless in her support for the project and really brought on some incredible poets to the fore, including Cassandra herself, which is one of the reasons why we're here tonight. And then Vik passed the baton to Ben, and Ben also brought some amazing authors to the project. And so kind of, yeah, we kind of compiled this this list of authors, which we then put on the website, and we asked each of them to provide an artist statement, because we wanted to learn really how they engage with surrealism and absurdism, what the practice meant to them. And I'm glad we did that, because many common themes recurred throughout the process, you know, especially this idea that I think someone even mentioned at the beginning of this call, that surrealism can often just be a very careful description of reality itself, or what we see before us. So yeah, that was MERCURIUS, and then 4 years later the baton came back to me, and I compiled and produced the book and did a lot of the kind of yeah, sort of fine-tuning, as it were, of the text, and then it's out there, and that was it. Feels, and so it's yeah, it definitely feels like a cycle coming to completion. And there are many in the introduction of various themes which come up for a book. Today, people were talking a lot about politics. Just before we started recording, you know, about Donald Trump, the sort of craziness of the polarization that we see across the world. And surrealism, of course, has always had a strong relationship to politics, and especially in the 20s, channeling that early provocative Dada spirit of rebellion. So what does that mean in the 2020s? I mean, I don't want to weigh too heavily into this debate, and it's just the last thing I'll say before I get into the poems. But I think, you know, there is an ongoing debate about what surrealism can and can't be. And I was looking at the introduction to the Routledge Companion to Surrealism, and the editor says, you know, she suggests making a distinction between surrealist and the word surreal, you know, claiming that should be some kind of separation. I would very gently push back against that and say, you know, in these times when the left and right are quite polarized, when we see these popular right-wing sort of ground movements, especially in Europe and the UK now, so a guy called Nigel Farage might be the next prime minister, which is quite scary. He's our own little Trump, basically. In these kinds of moments, do we really need an extra layer of elitism to kind of filter out what can and cannot be surrealism? I don't think so. And so I think accessibility, this is my main point, is in itself a radical position in that context. And if you look into the surreal absurd, you know, there are some very political poems, but some are actually not political at all, but there are undercurrents there if you look for them. And I think the important thing is to have this sort of engaging, immersive form of surrealism, which I hope we've managed to create and compile with the surreal absurd. So on that note, we had Cassandra's poem Trash, which you read now. So I'd like to read a poem called The Trash Man. It's not particularly political. And yeah, so it's called The Trash Man. There was a time when the station gave me not a moment's peace. All the laughing and crying, coming and going, one headache after another. Wary of such commotion, I stuck to the shadows, to the points of disconnection. Now, as I sweep the empty plazas and the platforms, I take comfort in the knowledge but everything has finally been and gone. The station master is my father, but not my friend. He's too busy with the business of living to concern himself with what I do. Even so, I believe we complement each other, if only because we love the same woman. At the end of my shift, I turn off the lights and drop my bags in the chute marked next beginning. If new stars don't come from the dust of old dreams, I'll be out of business. Like a beggar learning a new disguise, I leave the station empty-handed, stained by memory. And so I shut the final door. I simmer in the night. I bear the trident. I drink the skull cup. I roar. So, yeah, for my next piece, I believe I have some time. Yes. Going back to theme of politics and nature and ecological activism. Yeah, ecological activism has long been a component of surrealism, which is striven to counter the hyper-separation, of dualisms that typically embodied Western thought, mind versus body, or nature versus culture, or human intelligence versus animal intelligence. Human intelligence tending to be superior, according to Descartes. So surrealism has, often resisted these forms of dual thinking. Perhaps I think the 1970s, a surrealist group of Chargo were the most consistent in these efforts, even joining forces with a group of radical environmentalists to work against imprisoned, or what they saw as imprisoned animals. So I also love the work of Robert Bly, his introduction to Morning Glory, which is a fantastic set of prose poems. He talks about getting close to nature in order to see her properly. And the more you zoom into nature, the closer you get, the more surreal it can be. Again, another example maybe of surrealism often not being a question of, being weird and fantastical, but just looking at reality with a very clear gaze. So yeah, as Mark mentioned, I live in the forests of Asturias in Spain. I do a lot of walking in the forests of Spain. This summer I went with a friend and we walked for 5 or 6 days in the mountains, just sleeping rough and in caves and whatnot, which are around here. It was a very pleasurable experience. We did get bitten by a lot of ticks though, and there was a few thunderstorms. So I wrote this poem thinking about the tick and trying to, imagine the world from the tick's perspective. I feed on the warmth of others. That's just what I do. Not a choice. It's how Papa flung me into this world. Choices aren't for little things like me. They're for big things like clouds. Become rain or give way to sun. Forked lightning or sheet. One rumble of thunder or 17. Lazy things, clouds. Broad fools grinning in the cosmos. That's why they get to make choices. Generally speaking, the lazier you are, the more choices you have. That's why meteorologists have such a hard time predicting the weather. Clouds may choose at the last minute not to become rain. They'll issue a perfunctory rumble of thunder, flash a sly smile, then disappear without saying goodbye. No such luxury for me. I'm too busy being clever, sucking on the warmth of others. That's why I have so little time. Being clever is exhausting. And in those moments when I could make a choice, I'm usually asleep. To make choices, above all, you need time. Laziness and time, the perfect conditions for making a choice. Clouds have all the time in the world. That's why they make so many choices. Cool, I think is that my 12 minutes up, or do I have time for one little more?
Definitely time for more.
Okay, just one more. So continuing with the animal theme, donkeys pop up a lot in surrealism, I find. Even on the back of the book, we have a donkey there, which is actually Zachary Schomburg's Lucky Donkey. And we have Nate Logan's donkeys in the collection. And we have W.M. Hubbart's Forky Donkey in Hell. I wrote actually a small pamphlet a while ago about a pilgrimage of donkeys. So anyway, here's my contribution to the donkey literature in surrealism. It's called The Donkey. My favorite piece of Buddhist wisdom is the saying, To be a Buddha, you have to be kind of stupid. Enlightenment requires letting go of the concept of enlightenment, but I prefer a more literal interpretation. The stupid are wise. The wise man knows himself to be a fool. Donkeys, ancient cosmic donkeys, may have accidentally invented the universe. Luminous, grinning donkeys who see nothing shameful or absurd in the emptiness, or the ice giants of black holes in their bellies, or the serpents of planets in their foreheads. The mysteries that give humans such grief are, to these donkeys, neither frightening nor inexcusable, but simply part of the flora and fauna of their starlit playground. Realities that exist because they can. Their idiotic confidence might unsettle more intelligent minds, more critical minds, yet they have no qualms. Even in the deepest chasms, they feel no cold. When they look into the ascension pools, they see only their soft brown eyes staring back. Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you so much. Next we hear from Vik Shirley, who is a poet, writer, critic, and educator from Bristol, now living in Edinburgh. Vik's books include Corpses from Sublunary, Notes from the Underworld, also Sublunary, Disrupted Blue, and other poems on Polaroid, One by One, Poets, Stranger's Wave, The Continued Closure of the Blue Door, and cassette poems. Some Dear was published in 2024 by Broken Sleep, and Nervous Tick from Sublunary Editions is due out very soon, I think, right? And Vik's work has appeared in many journals, including Poetry London, PN Review, The Rialto, and many more. She's a regular performer at the European Poetry Festival, and she's a poetry school tutor teaching on the surreal narrative, absurdism, and grotesque. She co-edits Firmament Online and Surreal Absurdist at MERCURIUS, and she has a PhD in dark humor and in the surreal poetry from University of Birmingham. Thanks so much, Vik.
Thank you. Yeah, it's lovely to see everyone and to be back at Lit Balm, and for this reason, for this book, which is, yeah, it was just such it is quite a surreal kind of feeling, it actually coming together in this beautiful book, which I would now show if I weren't moving my books around at the moment and find it in my copies. But like, Thomas, you can flash it again because it's utterly gorgeous. Thomas's brother designed the cover, and yeah, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. The period of time, you know, we were doing the whole tag team thing. I think there was a run in the lockdown when I was doing my PhD. I was very isolated in Birmingham, and I was doing a PhD on dark humor and the surreal whilst editing, you know, on my solo run for the for editing Surreal Absurd. And yeah, it was really intense. It was really great, actually. There was, you know, it was quite a dark time, the you know, the whole lockdown and being isolated type of thing, but also it also made me feel quite emotional looking back. I was just looking back at my PhD earlier as I was sort of thought I'd say something about the mock fable in relation to humour, and you know, it was also just quite an incredible time as well. So yeah, I was going to say something. We were all going to sort of say a little something on the themes. Obviously, some of the themes are explored. Let me just set my timer. I mean, humor is kind of, I mean, everything's linked. Everything everyone's been saying here tonight, it's all linked, you know, with surrealism. There's so many different threads and they all connect to all the other threads. Yeah, I was going to say something about the mock fable in relation to humor, because I thought I had Some Dear. I'm going to read a few poems from Some Dear, and which is my newest publication. And I haven't read any of it on here before. The reason I thought about the mock fable in relation to humour, but I had a review in 3am magazine by Stephen Sunderland, who's also in the anthology. And he said that Some Dear was an uncanny and blackly comic fable cycle for a collapsing world. So I thought that sort of linked in with sort of politics side of things, as well as a sort of dark humour. Anyway, I started to write some notes, and then it was like time to come. So I just read out the notes actually, and you can think of it as a kind of broken up sort of collage poemy thing. And you can read my PhD online somewhere. Oh, I should have got the link, but I'm just going to whiz through because it became quite fun. Some notes, and then I'm going to read from some Dare. So. Dark humour, anthology, Breton. Serious humour, Donald Hall, Russell Edson. Mock fable, turning the table and emotional punchlines, chapter 3. Tom Jenks, James Tate, Secret. Roger Lawson, the creature had died. The alien, the little fellow died peacefully in his sleep at 11:02 last night. Roger Lawson, in their tears, drowned. The cowboy, how that ending. Roger working overtime, Roger spreading an elaborate rumour. Don't want to spoil, over-explain the magic. Donald Hall once said, while speaking of Edson's work, it's fanciful, it's even funny, but his humour carries discomfort with it, like all serious humour. This serious humour is something I strongly connect with. This mock solemn merriment, Morley, serious play, 2012, draws comparisons with the serious play associated with the Oulipo movement. Roger Lawson. Bergson also notes how comic absurdity is the same nature of that of dreams, page 92. What the poem hints at is grotesque and disturbing, but delivered in James Tate's trademark breezy tone. There's something of an emotional transaction here in the fish refusing to ever forgive him despite his contrition. In a way, what's remarkable is that Tate draws an emotional reaction from us all through such a strange anti-fable, emotionally distanced, reminding us why humour and surrealism go together so well. But what happens when surrealist animals cannot escape? The question is, if surrealist animals have traditionally operated as symbols of escape, what happens when they're unable to exit the system that contains them? These animals do not offer a way out. They persist inside the absurdity of the structures imposed upon them. Wyoming or Montana, sarsaparilla, a candlelit vigil for Roger Lawson, sarsaparilla served at the wake. Right, so that was my notes. Okay, that's like 4 minutes, so I'll read some poems. Okay, I'm not going to talk about some digs because I'll just launch into the poems. And we'll do that. Let me just see everyone again because I like seeing everyone. Just knowing you guys are there. Okay. Someday. Dedicated to the deer culled in Syracuse, New York, to 2023, 2024. Windscreens. Some deer ran onto a train track, which soon became an escalator, which soon became a descent to hell. There should be no deer in hell, said someone watching through a crystal ball-like device, but more modern and Scandinavian in design. It seemed to be some kind of administrative error which no one could undo. So they sent in a SWAT team, rescued the deer, and brought them back into the world. But the deer weren't really deer afterwards, so affected were they by flashbacks and nightmares. Woe betide anyone with heated seats who offered them a ride. Many windscreens were shattered in the Syracuse area. Okay. Tuxedo. Some deer lost their appetite and became fussy eaters. They would only eat oysters and would only drink brandy. Even then, it would all have to be served by a waiter wearing a tuxedo. The animal rights folk wanted to help, but it was expensive and hard to get support, given the lavish nature of the deer's requirements. So they sold the waiter experience to those keen to spend time with deer and in nature, and things ran along smoothly until the earth broke apart and swallowed all the waiters into its belly. Then the deer realised that they were being unreasonable, dropped the tuxedo requirements and allowed ordinary leisure wear-clad people to serve them instead. Please follow the link at the end of this poem if you would like to give it a try. www.deerwaiterexperienceinleisurewear.org. Okay, this one's called Tears. Some deer were chasing their tails. It was catching, and pretty soon all deer were chasing their tails. It started a trend, and humans began wearing fake deer tails and chasing their tails too. Chat shows stopped chatting and instead featured celebrities chasing their tails around the studio. It was kind of fun, but eventually everyone got dizzy and collapsed. Then some deer started crying and all the humans started crying too. The chat shows became just people on the floor crying until everybody in the tears drowned. Okay. Library. Some deer wanted a library. Other deer wanted a swimming pool. The deer who wanted a library thought this was ridiculous, given that there were lakes and streams and so forth. But the deer who wanted a swimming pool said they weren't hygienic, that they would prefer to have something with chlorine in. They put up a good argument, but ultimately the deer who wanted a library won. When the library opened, the deer who wanted a swimming pool took out all the books on swimming pools. It was a poor substitute, but it passed the time until victory would be theirs. Oh yes, victory would be theirs, they said regularly and knowingly at every opportunity, much to the annoyance of the deer who wanted a library, who really hoped they'd be over this thing by now. Okay. Okay. Flying. Some deer began to fly. They would mostly fly at night. Some of them did this for a Lost Boy vampiric feeling, others for a Raymond Briggs snowman, more wholesome children's story vibe. An elite few were chasing a more highbrow Roy Anderson, Mark Chagall buzz. They found evidence on a cave wall that their ancestors had also flown and felt this validated their activity. Some more irreverent deer decided to go against the grain and get into swimming and deep sea diving instead. No cave drawings depicted that, they said to each other smugly in deer language. Sometimes when the swimming deer swam on their backs near the surface of the water, looking up at the night sky, they would see the flying deer were swooping low. In these moments, their eyes would lock and an upbeat, euphoric, electronic melody would reverberate, whilst an explosive torrent of metallic pink hearts and gold stars zipped around the sky above them. This meant that they had completed level 1 and would progress to level 2 with no further delay. Okay. Right, yeah, two to finish on. That should be hopefully perfect. Okay. Yeah. Priest. Some deer were blessed by a priest. This meant the deer could immediately carry out wrongdoings and they were covered. Other deer were jealous and went to get blessed also. Pretty soon, everyone was blessed in carrying out wrongdoings. They locked up the priest so that he would have to bless them whenever their blessing ran out. On average, it was about 25 days. The priest was having regrets, but being locked away kept him out of trouble at least. The conditions that he was living in were better than the psychiatric ward at the prison from which he'd escaped, and the deer never found out that he wasn't really a priest. And I'm just going to finish on gravel. Some deer walked over gravel. They enjoyed the sound so much that they walked over gravel again. They also enjoyed the sensation, so a portion of them decided that this is what they'd like to dedicate the rest of their lives to now. Some other deer didn't get it, so splinter groups were formed. There was much criticism of the deer for liking such a dull activity, but others said that if it made them happy, why not? What was really creeping them out, the other deer said in deer language, was that the deer on the gravel had started smiling. Deer didn't smile, the other deer scowled. The scowling deer were then mocked by some local geese for their glowers. Consequently, they gave in and indulged in the gravel walking. Within hours, their faces became set in a kind of smirk. From their smirks, a grotesque pantomime began, which ran for forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Vik. Now we are delighted to hear from Ben Niespodziany, who is a writer, editor, curator, and folklorist, and is the author of 2 books. His writing has appeared in Indiana Review, Booth, Bennington Review, Fence, Wigleaf Top 50, and many other places, along with hosting the Neon Night Mike reading series in Chicago. He recently launched a Pajama Press with the first release of poetry book by Kik Araki Kawaguchi, which is out now. And you can find more at neonpajamas.com. Welcome, Benjamin.
Thank you so much, Mark. Yeah, thanks so much to Lit Balm for having this Mercurius Surrealism takeover. And thanks to my fellow editors, Thomas, Vik, and Marcus, for letting me be part of their absurdist circus. I was kind of the last edition of the quartet, and it's been really, really wonderful seeing this book come to life. And yeah, the book has over, I think, right at 80 poets, over 300 pages. It's really a doorstopper of an anthology, and it's really great to have kind of this ongoing discovery of surrealism and promotion in this regard. We had a really lovely virtual marathon reading earlier this summer featuring 18 of the readers. And it's been amazing to kind of continue this with more calls, honing in on the surrealism and the absurdism. So I'm going to read a handful of surrealist poems. A large amount of my personal writing is inspired by my very short attention span and spending far too much time online, often browsing the literary communities on Twitter and Blue Sky and Instagram, and really gravitating toward the writings of poets like Barton Smock and Nate Logan, who was mentioned earlier, and Shivani Mehta, all of whom are in this anthology. Really kind of short, condensed, strange surrealism. And as a result, my poems are also very short and kind of compact and odd. This first one is called An Ounce of Surrealism, kind of riffing off of a weird drug deal. He bought an ounce of surrealism. It turned his teeth inside out. A cloud sprouted from his toes. He started to pray to his alien. He knew the difference between animal and casual. He knew how to properly crawl, so he wandered to an abandoned shopping mall, footless and ruthless and clear. And this next one is like 11 words, very short. And actually, there's 3 animals involved in this one, and I wish it included a deer to kind of riff off of Vik's, but unfortunately no deer. It's called Squinting. I thought it was a camel, but as the moose came into view, I knew it was a horse. So maybe a later rendition will include a deer instead of one of those 3 animals. So yeah, as you can see, very short little pieces. This one is called Sloth Nest. I went to Costa Rica and saw a sloth, and I thought about where they sleep, and then I pictured the idea of a sloth nest. So here we are. Sloth Nest. Time reminds me something doesn't exist until it does. A sloth nest in a mangrove, a snow globe in my shoe. I don't know what to do with all this free room, so I write about snakes giving birth to eels, orange slices coming to life, the ocean catching fire. Why? This next one is called Well. I have a lot of poems about falling into a well. I've never fallen in a well. I've never seen anyone fall in a well. But I have so many. I don't know why. It's a fixation. This is Well. I have fallen head over heels, you see, right down a well. Should have seen it coming, but no, these ancient depths, this old stone bastard by the Lancaster moss and the Gothic ghouls. Of course I shouted for help, 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 help. Only 3 times I shouted. And then a mime arrived, about half my age. He did not say, wait here or hang tight, did not try to lift me up out of the well, but instead went running to where we do not know. This well is old, much older than me. I am knee-high in moss, lichen, the like. Sometimes I wonder how I get in these predicaments. Then I remember, yes, this earth, this planet, this land, this life. Pardon me, I can hear footsteps approaching. So quiet and so tiny, I start to smile. I can only assume this is all part of the bit. This next one is a prose poem. about the oldest man in the world. It's called Brainception, but I don't like the title, so I'm going to change the title someday. Brainception. The oldest man in the world lives quietly inside my brain. He never says anything. He watches horse races and he hates being alone. I'm told the final style guide is writing a version of itself through the looking glass of an atlas formed into a robot. The final robot is actually a glass atlas formed as a style guide on stylizing versions of itself into writing. Look, pilgrims hang from the bridge. Chickens run from money because money does not have meat. I eat a worm to try to be more like them. It changes nothing. I will die quietly. Then I'll fry a fish. This next piece is inspired by Tom Jenks, who I think was also referenced earlier. I really love his line level surrealism and such strange use of dialogue and narrative. This one's called Paula. Paula is arranging the plates in a way that makes us never hungry again. She is holding a dead animal with a gun in its mouth. How about, I ask, we try to pry it out? That's not for you to decide, Paula tells me, shifting the plates ever so slightly. I almost vomit. Earl hurls. Paula is starting a new project in the garage. We follow her against our will. Is it anything like the plates, we ask her, trying not to gag? She passes me a hand grenade and promises it's a dud. The buttons on the backs of our heads have not been pressed in years. We make it clear it's all we want. And this next one is called Origin, and it's inspired by my family and upbringing in Indiana, but obviously with a very surrealist tinge to it. Origin. My family force-fed me whole stalks of corn, fresh apples, ripe carrots, heavy eggs, then buried me in the middle of our family field. My uncles and grandfathers dug shallow, yet dug deep, burying me completely, so I was but a mound near their fountain of dandelions and wine. And when the time came, my cousins were grown and vocal. They dug for me with their nails, and they found me there, opening up my stomach and eating all of me, all for them, which I had provided, against my will, yet so glad to be part of the family, so glad to be part of their feast. This next one is very short, called Alien Autopsy. With increasing difficulty, the crew removed the glowing blob, still beating, still bleeding, in evening blue. This next one is called Mimosas. Kind of riffing off of Bottomless Mimosas, but I don't actually mention mimosas in the story. Mimosas. At the bottom of the bottomless hill, there rests an aquarium no one has ever seen. And within the aquarium, there live millions of swimming species the world has never seen. And someone not of this world, someone no one has ever seen, visits the aquarium daily to clean it and rinse it and refill it and feed it. And why are you still believing this story? Why might you be invested in such evil, awful lies? And then I have one more of my own poems, and I'm going to close with the poem from an outside author. This one is called On Surrealism. And I believe my first piece was called An Ounce of Surrealism, and then I'll close with On Surrealism. Surrealism does not mean painting an arm onto a shark and asking why it resembles a stork. Surrealism is when the stork with shark arms you invented in the last stanza finally begins to talk. And I would like to close with a poem from Kikaraki Kawaguchi, who was mentioned in my bio. His super wild work appears in our Surreal Absurd anthology, and he was the first author that I released a book with this year after launching my own press, Pyjama Press. We also have 2 books coming out next year, both of whom are featured in the anthology. I won't name names, but I would like to close with a surrealist poem from this collection from Kikaraki Kawaguchi. It's called New Dawn Fades, and it's a lot better than my writing. New dawn fades. Quite obviously, I am living the American dream. Snakes pour from the heads of my daughters. Amnesia spills out of our pockets. The eternal in me recognizes the eternal in your keep. It is a reading of all my trespasses. It is your forensic accountant. It is my foam and honey of the Petri plate, igniting a sentient mohawk for the psychoanalyst. She slips on the gloves, but the gloves are not sterile or even physical, because the work is not of this world. She must reach into my dinosaur brain. That shit is deep oil, which is why her symbolic gloves go fingertip to forearm. Obviously, I am eating America clean. It falls from meat, like the bones of a slow-cooked creature. It is the home of free shipping, free relocation. To be unfree in this home is brave. It is a home of pillars, no roof, voices falling from the bone. And that is Kikaraki Kawaguchi. Thank you all so much. This is awesome.
Thank you, Benjamin. Definitely put a link to that translation in the chat. Yeah. And next we hear from Marcus Silcock, formerly Marcus Slees, who teaches English literature at a high school in Barcelona. His writing has appeared in Slovak, Turkish, Polish, and Danish, and has appeared widely in magazines and anthologies in North America and Europe. Marcus co-edits Surreal Absurd for MERCURIUS. His latest book of prose poems and microfictions, Dream Dust, is available from Broken Sleep Books. Find out more at Nevermind the Beats, and I think Marcus will stick that in the chat as well in a minute. Welcome, Marcus.
Well, all right. Yes, thank you so much for inviting us, Cassandra and Mark and Jeff. And it's been a real journey with this anthology. Lots of great people in there. If you haven't picked it up, highly recommend. And yeah, thanks to all of the people that contributed to this great anthology and fabulous co-editors, this community, right? It's about community. So it's been a great journey. I'm going to read some prose poems, some microfiction, some new ones. And the first one, I didn't even really set it up this way, but it actually does reference deer, but it's not my usual deer. It's the beautiful smell of deer, which is one of my favorite smells, and it's called musk. The whole town smelled like chives and onion with a dash of mustard. She sampled the popular dish, chips thin as a shoelace, mayo on the side, clams in large pot with white wine brine. Strange, though, her hankering for deer musk. Perhaps this, the forest moved inside her, beside the coal mines. Perhaps this, her earthly hands, she knew how to use them. Then there, beside the table, some cracked man, an oar of deer musk. When he doffed his cap, she moved a little closer. His soaked jeans, sexy. Also, his gaping mouth hole. She would like to move inside there, riding the waves of his tongue board, crashing against his rocky teeth. And the next one's about farmers. I moved from Northern Ireland when I was 11 and got this North American accent. But one of my favorite places in Northern Ireland was a place called Carrickfergus. And my grandfather was a farmer and his grandfather and so on. So this is called Farmers Weekly. At Carrickfergus, they stuck their heads in the laughing stock, then bird spotted with professional binoculars. The leather strap hung heavy on their necks. They took turns trimming the hedges, feeding the budgies. They shared copies of Farmers Weekly. They loved to count the livestock. They ate wheaten bread hot from the toaster. It swam with 3 pools of salted butter. On Saturdays, the bath, hot water from the hob. It was hard not to love their Skoda. They stroked it like a camel. float on. So many days of dull duties. Elias plays escape from the city. He's invited to the island. The dusty promenade will sole my sandals and grit my toes, thinks Elias. I need to fathom something secure, socks and buckles. At the party, an Argentinian is expanding his hands. He has deep thoughts about peas. The guests bend over the table, split their sides. Elias is not sure why everyone is laughing, since he speaks little Spanish. The host understands everything and springs from his chair. He disappears into the kitchen. He returns with something in his hands, sprinkles them into their Japanese gin and tonics. The peas are floating. I'm finally free, thinks Elias, unbuckling his sandals. He floats down to the sea beside the palm trees. The sea expands blue on blue into an endless horizon. The waves crash inside him. Back home, he vomits a third of a bird on his pillow. Dream shoes. She had a bun in the oven. The wind howled through the shotgun wedding. She switched to Virginia Slims and a new diet. They shoveled with the golden shovel in their dream shoes, cleaning toilets at the paint factory, then the banks. One night, the bank manager changed the alarm code, and a rookie cop spun his sirens and drew a shaky gun. We're the cleaners, they said. But it was hard to prove it. Frisking and spreading, bent over the hunk of metal, they stayed frozen. And this is a true story. It's called The Judo King. We were in the hot spot. Father slipped out of the army. New life emerged in the new city. Skeleton trees, buttery sunsets. When Father found the new job at the flavor factory, we were filled with light, pleasant quivers. £1 to slide down the water slide. Hot chocolate from the new machine for 20p. The Judo King was sent to spy. We fed him Brussels sprouts on Sunday. It sounded simple till it wasn't. Chalk talk. The detective scans the tree. Jacaranda sticks to her sandals. Yes, you guessed it. It's that time. The time of flowers. The fiesta of flowers. Old-timers are weaving them into great wreaths on the ground, outlined in chalk. A city of flowers. The ducks swirl the lake in perfect circles. The tree is not really a full tree. It is the stump of a tree. It is a dead tree, or maybe alive, since the stump is still in the ground. The detective walks the edge of the abyss between life and death. You are more likely to fall in love that way. The swinging rope bridge howls like a love whistle into the groaning canyon. Life is a donut with a soft gush in the middle. Nightshed. We have enjoyed the more melodious sound of the French in the French Pyrenees. Also, we have inhaled the sulfur fumes and dipped our feet outside the 800-year-old hospital. Also, we ate cheese, and of all cheese, French cheese. Also, Belgian blondes. Part French, the gnome beer is the best blonde. At the Nightshed, everyone linked sausages together. New lips for new lovers. We slouched against each other, our hats full of straw. You can place the shoes in the net, he said. At 6:15, we turned on the oven for the French tortilla. Then we examined the hordes of notes in our pockets, the stars shining like shook foil. Bumper cars. There was always some new way to squeeze money from a stone, signals from other life forms, tapping into hypnotic powers. The collectors were always coming to collect. Mother had to face them with 6 children in tow. At the fairground, we rode the bumper cars. It was something like glee. That somersault of the stomach, it happened so rarely. We smashed into pileups, sailed away with the sparks from the wire above us. Father's mustache twirling like a pinwheel. Saved again. Crack house at the bottom of the street, crack house at the top of the street. Next door, born agains. They parked a yellow school bus in their driveway, wall to wall, crammed with clothing. They loved to save everything. One of the born-agains was a drummer. He invited me over to bang drums for Jesus. You had to keep your eye on the pit bull. We banged our way into thin slices of heaven. And this one is maybe, there's a kind of maybe permeable border between prose poetry and microfiction, ongoing kind of discussion around that. I think this one is maybe more towards the microfiction end, but it's very short. And it's called For the Birds. A naked man emerged from the hedges, parted the curtains of his trench coat. Green tea, he said. He had brought green tea from far away, taped to the lining, little bags of tea. Cheaper since, the trade wars. Tatra wondered how the man sweated into the tea, but he took the chance. Upon arriving back at his country abode, he heated the water in the kettle. Hello, please take a seat, said the kettle. I'll be with you in a moment. The kettle was in fine fettle. It knew how to warm the cockles. Very soon, the green tea was fermenting in his mug. Tatra began to ponder his great-grandfather, nigh to pasture, the licorice twists of his pipe, the rusk beside the fire. Something was sprouting. His fingers were feeling twiggy. Up ahead, the lights. Armed guards stopping the cars, sectioning off the road, looking for something. The tea. Tatra moved into the forest, waiting for something mythic. A goat or a ram, maybe. But it was a forest, not a mountain. The forest was full of birds. The birds had turquoise feet. They plopped them up and down. The brighter the feet, the greater the mate. The blue-green feet, that was something special. I'm not a little machine. I'm organic nature. Yes, of course, said the birds, marching their turquoise feet faster. His toes twisted into roots. His hands, it was sprouting twigs, little paradise buds on the ends of his fingers. The birds pecked them. His scream was muffled, but his juice was sappy. And then the final short little prose poem about fish. It's called Big Fish. We don't want the washing machine to kick the bucket. We stick a lemon in it. The lemon is sprinkled with baking soda. Baking soda is good for everything. I'm also there with my toes, says Emile. Right he is. My toes have become his toes in the smell factory. We scrub them in the evening, around the fire, beside the rusk bucket. Also, the shoes. They need a good scrub on the inside. The pipes? Well, we can try, but those smells often come from beyond us. They are hard to erase. Emil rinses the glasses and cracks them in the sink at least once a month. Slippery bugger, he says. What I mean to say is this. It is a large fish. We are inside it. We are trying to make the best of it. We hope in the belly of this big fish we can find respite, even here and there, before it belches us into nothingness. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Marcus. And next we hear from John Wessick, our technical director, who has written over 100 million words on poems, short stories, and novels. His works have appeared in journals such as I-70 Review, New Verse, News, Patterson, and Unlikely Stories. He is regional editor of San Diego Poetry Annual and host of the Gelato East Fiction Open Mic. His latest book, Redutio and Absurdium, is a collection of parodies. He lives in Manchester, New Hampshire, and longs for gene editing to bring giant wombats back from extinction.
Thank you, Mark. I'll read the opening of the story, and you can find the rest of it in the link in the chat. It's called Identity Theft. There were 2 quick knocks on the door, and a man in a white coat entered the exam room. He had a craggy face and gaunt body that was all elbows and knees. Mr. Bitumen, I'm Dr. Chipolata. He opened my chart. We got your tests back, and the news isn't good. The tumor is in a delicate part of your brain, and surgery wouldn't remove all the cancer. This is an aggressive malignancy that rarely responds to chemo. All we can do is make you comfortable. The best way to lift your spirits is with movie musicals. There's a hospice that looks just like a Tyrolean village in Sound of Music. You can spend your final days enjoying a morphine drip along with tunes from Goin' My Way, A Star Is Born, Oklahoma, Mary Poppins, An American in Paris, and Singin' in the Rain. I reached for the pamphlet and stumbled into him. When Dr. Chipolata caught me, I slipped his wallet out of his pocket and dropped mine. Oh, sorry, I pointed to the floor. Is that yours? When he lifted the wallet off the floor, he squinted in pain and held his hands to his head. Now I was the doctor, and he was the patient. It's the tumor, I said. Let me help you out of that. I'll write you a prescription for Oxy. I rolled up my sleeves of my oversized white coat before accompanying Mr. Bitumen to the waiting room where Edna sat next to young Becky. Mrs. Bitumen, your husband expressed interest in movie musicals. I handed her the pamphlet. Try to make Harvey's last months enjoyable. I strolled to the reception desk. You're not Dr. Chipolata, a nurse said. This says I am. I held up my ID card. Guess I was mistaken. June Scallion's here again. I put her in room 3. After renewing June Scallion's prescription, I realized I could write one for myself, too. By the time I had to perform afternoon surgery, I was feeling no pain. How hard could it be? After all, I'd seen plenty of operations on TV. This is our new intern, Dr. Wiley's stopwatch, the anesthesiologist said when I entered the operating room. Glad to meet you. I reached out to shake hands. Doctor, I'm sterile, young Wiley backed away. Sorry to hear that. Tell me, Wiley, ever performed brain surgery before? No, sir. Well, there's no time like the present to start. What's the first thing you want to do? Open the skull? Go for it! A crimson line formed on the patient's shaved skull as young Wiley sliced the skin with a scalpel. Good job, Wiley, you got this. He reached for the bone saw and I gave him thumbs up. With my encouragement, young Wiley did pretty well until he severed the internal carotid artery. Oh, well, you have to break a few mistakes if you want to learn. With a little more self-confidence, young Wiley would do fine. After changing out of my scrubs, I exited the hospital wondering what kind of car I now drove. Would it be a Mercedes or a Ferrari? Whatever it was would be an improvement over my 12-year-old Hyundai. I pushed through the revolving door and saw a blind woman in a curve-hugging pantsuit standing on the steps. Dr. Chipolata, that's me. She handed me an envelope. You've been served. And like I said, you can read the rest of it at the link in the chat.
I love that. I used to say, oh, no one's quite like John, but I think, you found I looked up the collective noun for deer, and I believe there are many, but I'm kind of liking bevy. So you found your little bevy of deer here, I think. And Dr. Chipolata sounds pretty funny. I don't mind movie musicals. I think maybe that's a bad thing, but I quite like them. Anyway, thank you, John. You're always amazing. Next, we have Mike. I'm hoping Mike's going to read for us. Mike always has something awesome. Mike Bolds, are you going to read for us? You got to unmute yourself, though. He's got his suitable background. We can't hear you yet. Mike, you got to unmute yourself. Hang on.
I say it didn't happen at the factory.
Excellent.
I'm going to read a poem called Empty Cups from Original Sin. And that's a Chervena Barva Press chapbook. It's called Empty Cups. Good morning. I love you. The golden past, the Afghan, and the staircase you don't remember. So long since I've heard those words, I love you. I say them to myself because you won't or can't. When we see each other again, will there be light or fire? Will there be cloud cover and wind? Just what to expect. The causeway from the mainland to the island is underwater. What will be exposed when the water recedes? Harmony in the microwave when the espresso reheats to a right temperature? Are we to be left with empty cups or a satisfying return to action? That's
wow,
that.
That's amazing. Thank you. I think there's like a little philosophy in there at the end. And I'm not
Maybe a little bit.
a little bit. I think so. We love you. So we can tell you we love you. So
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mike. Next, we have Vicky. We have fabulous Vicky. What have you got for us? Something sort of synesthetic, I guess. Using all the senses and seeing colors and what?
Well, okay. This is called Fair Trade. Manning a stall at a garage or car boot sale must be so exhausting. Why exhausting, you ask? Well, try smiling in a warm and welcoming sort of way and being nice to everyone who comes to your table, even if they make inane comments and end up buying nothing. I can offer a remedy for this tedium, and I present to you the blue stall. It doesn't matter what kind of sale it is, the stall must be blue. Nothing but blue items on the table are allowed. People running the other stalls would be allowed a break every couple of hours, and they would come over to run the blue stall for 15 minutes at a time, with permission to let rip. It would go like this. Visitor. Oh, these objects are nice, aren't they? To which the stallholder would reply, if that's all you can contribute, you can piss off out of here. Or I really like that, but it's far too expensive, I'm afraid. Well, up yours then, you miserly minger. And so on, in any way the recovering seller sees fit, before returning to their own table, totally rejuvenated and back to their polite, smiley selves. I'm going to seriously consider my intellectual property rights, as I think I'm onto a winner.
We think you're onto a winner as well. Thank you, Vicky. I love that idea. I need a good 15-minute blue store every now and then. Now we have Cindy. Now, apparently Bob is asleep in the kitchen. We have tried to get in contact with the kitchen laureate, but he takes all kinds of hours in his poetic practice, and he's currently getting some. So Cindy's going to read one of her incredible badass Brooklyn poems, and she's going to follow up with a wonderful collaboration she's done with the kitchen laureate. So we'll get some nice words to leave us on.
But today I'm gonna have to be the living room and the kitchen laureate.
Wow, maybe you should walk around your house.
Yeah, really. This poem makes sense for me to read because I wrote it right after reading the anthology. So if you see any connection to the zeitgeist of the anthology that was intended. It's called, oh, and I should mention, I sent it around to a group that Jeff Wright's very familiar with, Brevitas. I think we all know what that is. We exchange poems twice a month via email. So I sent it around, and the founder, our fearless leader, Steve Zeitlin, said that he was doing some sort of book with Bob Holman and Warren Lehrer, who's the brother of Brian Lehrer, a radio host here. And they took this poem. And the project may never get off the ground, but it's already taken. So, 3 surreal couplets. This poem will begin with a blue jay and end with a toaster. I said this poem, it should be couplet. This couplet will begin with a blue jay and end with a toaster. This couplet will begin with a salamander and end with a flat screen TV. This couplet will begin with an election and end with a nightmare. That's
That
mine.
was awesome. I love the couplets. You're a bit of a couplet girl. You've got some other couplets, I think.
Maybe I should do cutlets. That
Yeah.
would be a little more surreal.
Cutlets, lamb cutlets.
Lamb cutlets. Or maybe deer cutlets.
Ooh.
Um,
And you've got a collaboration with Bob. You've got a few.
I've got a collaboration with Bob that Cassandra and Paul Hetherington were nice enough to put in their amazing magazine, Axon. We had 5 poems published there, and we're both very proud of that. It's a wonderful magazine. And I'm not sure, they took 5, so I'm not sure which to read, but in keeping with, well, you know what? I'm going to read the first one. It's number 97 of our many, like 250 collaborations. A watched clock never boils, but sometimes it melts all over our hands. And sometimes in paintings, our hands are lobsters, moving slowly counterclockwise, unwinding the available birds, the ones that make time fly. That's for Bob.
Thank you. That's some lovely words from Cindy and Bob on which to end. So it's back to you, Mark.
Who doesn't love some lobster hands, Thank you so much, everybody, for this amazing show tonight, especially Thom Helm, Vik Shirley, and Marcus Silcock, and Ben Niespodziany. What a great reading. Very unusual work, and definitely needs to be out there. I'm going to throw something at you here at the end, which is something that I've been working on as well. It's called Here Are Some Things I Preoccupy Myself With. Last night, I spoke with my dead mother. Mother said, "You don't have enough rocks in your little garden. You'll need more rocks to ripen your vegetables," she said. Once we climbed the mountains following the white-tailed deer, the jackrabbits and the yetis and the unicorns. Those fated creatures looked back in disdain as under a parasol we ate meat and fish and beetles. "It's easier to eat a beetle than a fish," you'd said. Thank you, everybody. Wonderful evening. Take care and see you on the flip side. Lots of love and lots of poetry and lots of luck. Cheers, guys.
Hey, listen, we'll see you on November 1st, hopefully.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, way to go.
Thanks, guys.